Welcome to the Total Release Podcast, where we let go all those weights that hold us back, preventing us from having real impact. Today's episode is called What Grace Taught My Son on the Side of the Freeway. Oh, yeah. Man, I got to tell you something. Yesterday, I had a really interesting situation. And it really wasn't that crazy, but it was crazy for me, but it was a blessing in disguise. I had a chance to take my son to a doctor's appointment. And on the way, I left the house, and I remember getting ready to get on the freeway, but there's like a U-turn to get onto the carpool lane off the ramp. And what I didn't realize is that they had changed it, which has been a while ago, but I never go that way. And I decided to do what I had done years ago, which was make a U-turn. Well, little did I remember that once I made that U-turn, I realized there was a sign there that said no U-turns. And so I ended up making an illegal U-turn. And as soon as I made that U-turn, I looked back and I saw right behind me a highway patrol officer who, at that moment, I got on the freeway and he proceeded behind me to get on the freeway. And lo and behold, I started to get over from the carpool lane to the next lane over, and he followed me and turned his lights on. And I told my son right before he did, I'm like, we're getting pulled over today. I can already see it coming. And so it's funny now, but at that moment I was like, oh man, the crazy thing about it is I had not had a speeding ticket or any citation in over 27 years, any tickets, right? I think I got a fixed ticket one time because my registration the sticker wasn't on there. I had it, but I didn't put it on the car. And so they gave me a citation. It was a fixed ticket for like $20 or something. But that was it. So in 25 years, all I could think was, man, I had not done anything to get a ticket or anything. So I pull over. We're on the side of the freeway. And my son, mind you, he's 16 years old. And so we just got his permit recently. So I'm teaching him how to drive properly, how to make wise decisions. And in this case, how to respond when you get pulled over by the police officers, right? Always make sure that you respond with integrity, with great character. Keep your head focused in the right direction. And remember what I told you, right? So the officer comes up to the vehicle and he starts, talking to us. And immediately, as soon as he walks up, I confess, hey, officer, I am so wrong. I know what I did. I made an illegal U-turn and I apologize. I really did not realize that they had changed the sign. I remembered, but I had forgotten. And so he said, okay, I understand. He's like, let me get your license. Let me get your insurance. Let me get your registration. By this time, while we were pulling over, I had my son grabbing the registration and the insurance. And of course, he couldn't remember what it looked like. So it was only a couple of pieces in the glove box. But he found them. And I always keep my wallet right next to the cup holder. And so I told him, I said, this is where you always want to keep your driver's license and your wallet. So that way, if you do get pulled over, you're not reaching in the back. You're not reaching for a bag. You're not reaching for anything. You're just grabbing it. It's right there. They can see where your hand is and they can see what it is. And at that moment, it was just, a perfect time for him to learn and for me to also learn something too. So the officer runs our information and runs my credentials, right? But while we're sitting there, I'm like talking to my son like, man, I can't believe it. It's been 27 years since 1998, right? The last time I had a ticket was in 1998. I was headed to St. Louis from Atlanta, Georgia. I had my mom in the car and we were going to my cousin's graduation, college graduation, right? And that was the last time I got pulled over. They gave me a ticket. I was, going about 15 miles over the speed limit. And after that, I have not had any speeding tickets or any citations that would have affected my insurance, my driving record. And so I was pretty proud about that. But I realized at that moment, that wasn't what he needed to know. He needed to understand what was most important, which was safety, protocol, um, telling the truth, confession, right? And being honest about your mistakes. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're not, then that's different, right? I'm not saying admit to something that you didn't do, but in this case, I knew I was wrong because I did see it after I made the turn. And the challenge was I went ahead and made the decision to keep turning because I knew if I tried to get back over, there were other cars following behind me, and that would have been unsafe as well. So I went ahead and made the complete turn. And while we were sitting there, so interesting, while we were sitting there, all of a sudden, while I was thinking in my head about me, a quick peace came over me. And I heard the word grace, like in my heart, like grace. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I look over at my son and I say, hey, man, I kind of got a feeling he's going to let us go. I heard grace just now. And then I look and I can see through the rearview mirror that he's walking up towards the car. And he came back pretty quickly, so he hadn't been gone that long. He walks up, comes to my son's door, and he says to me, he says, I'm looking at your information, your record, and I can tell you don't have anything. And I said, yes, sir. I said, it's been over 25 plus years. He says, yeah, I can see. He says, looks like you got everything together. He asked me, was my address the same? I said, well, on my license, I recently moved to a new place not too long ago, so it's different. And he says, okay, like as if he already knew that. It's crazy because sometimes we are avoiding confrontation because we're afraid of the unknown. When really, if you're honest with yourself, if you tell the truth, if you make it not about you, that's when things open up and things go better. And I'm not saying in every situation it's always going to be like that. I just believe that when you practice alignment, you put yourself in positions to receive grace. And I'm just blessed that my son was able to be in the car with me to experience that. And so I just want to walk through, just a few things that I've learned and observed that I think is really important for all of us to understand, in these situations, whether it's being pulled over by a cop, or just being in a situation where you really, you made a mistake and you really meant well. You didn't mean to affect someone or do your community harm or do your neighbor harm. You know what I mean? You know how many times neighbors fall out because of a tree limb that fell into their yard, or maybe something fell on the gate, you know what I mean? Or someone parked in front of the driveway, or maybe you did it, but you weren't thinking at the moment, right? I think the first thing that we need to do is recognize, what's really happening here, right? And try to come to some kind of compromise and just say, I messed up. Take ownership. I own it. And I believe that it's sacrificial in nature, but really on the other side of making that decision to tell the truth, to fess up, you gain wisdom. You have the opportunity to actually have a dialogue. My son and I had a dialogue for the remaining time of our trip. And it was like, this happened because of this. And, what if we wouldn't have been honest? What if I hadn't have said anything? What if my record really wasn't that good? Maybe if I had a couple of citations on there, maybe he would have been like, hey, you're not learning your lesson, and slapped another one on me, right? And I realized a lot of times, it's the same thing with, parenting. We're looking at our children to see what your character is. If you make a mistake, it's not like the world's going to come to an end. There's grace. There's grace allowed. I want to encourage someone right now who's afraid to tell the truth, afraid to take ownership, to know that grace does exist. No matter how big and bullish someone may seem, no matter what title they're carrying, grace does exist. And I believe that it was, God letting me know that in that moment. I felt that presence. I felt that spirit. And I'm so grateful for that. So anyway, just remember, growth doesn't happen, because we're right all the time. It happens, or it begins when we are, when we take ownership, when we're responsible, when we do the best that we can with what we have. And character really comes down to it, right? It's being prepared in those moments, because you just never know who you're going to come up against, who you're going to run into, and you never know what kind of grace they have for you, but you got to be ready to receive it. So most people, you know, you know, they tend to get defensive, right? Listen, you got to be humble, right? You got to take accountability in those moments. My son had a chance to see that, and we have 5 children, so he's number 4, and just knowing that he's going to be driving soon, I just want to make sure that he is on the right track and doing the right thing, and remembering this experience with his dad, right? That's the main thing. Remember this experience with your dad, because my pride could have got in the way, and I could have been thinking like, oh man, I just messed up in front of my son, and now I got to show him how tough I am, and then get us both beat up. You know what I'm saying? This could have been a whole different story. You could have saw Daniel Shorter and his son on the side of the freeway, both face down. It could have been a terrible situation. No, I humbled myself. I wanted to make sure that he understood how good character is in those moments, like how grace works. According to Psychology Today, modeling accountability as a parent increases the likelihood that teens will mirror their behavior by 61%. They listen, my mentors always told me, Daniel, people are always watching you, even when you don't know it. They're paying attention. That could be a moment in his life that he'll never forget, that he'll pass on to his children. Now, the funny part is, by the time his children start driving, I don't think anybody's going to be driving cars anymore, right? Autonomous driving will probably be in full effect, and I'm sure it's coming really soon. So keep buying stock in that technology, right? Anyway, that's not a recommendation. That's just me talking. Anyway. So let me ask you a question. What are you modeling when you make a mistake in front of other people, like your children, or at work, in front of your employees, your colleagues? What happens when you make a mistake? I mean, I know that it's important. It's imperative for people to see that we're human, that we make mistakes, and that you can rise and be great and still make mistakes at certain point in times in your life. And guess what? People respect you. People actually say, man, he or she is really something else. Like, man, he took responsibility. And more importantly, not only did you take responsibility, but you made a decision to unpack it, to see what lesson was learned, and to do something different next time. Do something better, right? So anyway, that's my question to you, right? So here's another thing. You got to investigate, right? Why did I feel peace while I was waiting? To be honest with you, I was concerned about my record. But then there's a part of me, right? So it's the mind of me, my mind, that starts tripping, but I'm always reminded about how am I supposed to do. There was a big campaign years ago, and everybody had on these little bracelets. What would Jesus do, right? You remember that? Anybody remember that? What would Jesus do? And it always pops in my mind to think about, what would Jesus do in that situation? What am I supposed to do? If I'm setting an example for my son, what should I do? Why did I feel peace in that moment? Because somewhere in my heart, the truth was there. I've been working to do the right things. I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. I am so far from perfect. But in this situation, sometimes people like me in that situation feel entitled. We feel validated. We feel like we did something. But the reality is we're not in control of anything, because that moment I made a mistake that I wasn't even aware of. And how many times in life do we make mistakes that we're unaware of, and that life teaches us a lesson? But if we take it personal, I like the book by Don McGill Ruiz, The 5 Agreements, right? In the 5 agreements, one of them is do not take it personal. Don't take it personal. Maybe it's designed to teach a lesson in a way that's beneficial for you, for the people that are watching you, and so many other people behind them. It's really a blessing in disguise when we respond. Yesterday I talked about how not to be, on autopilot, and how to know when you are on autopilot, right? And so the thing about it is just be okay with things changing. Actually, I take that back. It wasn't being on autopilot. That was the day before that. But yesterday was about when events in your life happen. When events happen. I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. And it's so funny because on autopilot, that conversation was, do you remember what you did yesterday? No, I don't always remember what I said or did yesterday, but I know I did something and I said something. And so you're probably laughing at me. You're like, is this guy serious right now? Yes, I am serious, right? The days are coming together as one. It's one long day right now, right? So I felt this peace. I felt the still voice. I heard it say grace. See, that's what happens when you put in the work to stay in alignment. Grace isn't random. It's a seed that grows. It grows when evidence of good character is present, right? When you have evidence of good good character, grace is growing. See my little plant back here? Imagine this is grace. Every time I look at it, my ZZ plant, it's constantly growing. Something's coming out of it, and it grows. Some of it grows really fast, and some of it grows really slow. But they're growing, and usually when it's slow, it's like 6 stems coming up at one time versus one shooting up really quickly. So it's like multiplication. Things are happening, and I'm like, wow, look at this. It's the same thing when you plant good seeds of character. You might say, man, it's growing slow, but guess what? You got like a whole harvest about to hit. And not only will you be fed or get oxygen from these green leaves, everybody gets to benefit from it. We all get to eat fruit from the tree. I'm excited right now. So here's another question. Are you living in such a way that people or God can pull your record and see integrity? Ooh, mic drop. I need a sound effect right now. This is what happens when you run your own podcast by yourself. I need a side effect. Somebody, anybody there? Okay. All right. People who practice spiritual mindfulness and inner reflection are 40% more likely to remain calm in high stress encounters. That's from the Harvard Business Review. Think about that. If you practice mindfulness, get your mind right. Your mind right, your heart's right. Look, align it. Get this right, then let it, and keep focusing on it. And let it seep down into here. Let it marinate in here. and let it get into here, into your belly. You know what I'm saying? And now you're eating the whole roll. You get the whole experience. And so when these moments happen, these encounters, low stress. You might get a little nervous. Low stress. You have peace. You have grace. The people that are watching get to practice it just like you did and do even more. Here's another one, right? You got to learn how to surrender, right? Let grace speak louder than guilt, right? Let grace speak louder than guilt, right? There's always like some kind of I blew it thought that goes through people's minds, but grace says something different. I'm still growing. I made a mistake. See, the officer made a decision based on posture, right? We sat there, my son and I, our spirits were in good places. We really felt like, hey, my dad's tripping about his tenure, his 27 years. But at the end of the day, it's just a ticket. What's the worst thing can happen? You get a ticket and you keep going, right? But I realized it's not just your paperwork. It's your posture. What's your attitude? How do you smile? How do you take responsibility, right? See, I was pulled over, but at the end of the day, I was elevated to some degree. My character was elevated in my son's eyes. He's like, you know what? I hear people talk about this, but this is how it works. Good character. Stay positive. Keep your head on swivel, but keep your heart and your mind aligned into doing the right things. Here's a question. Do you give yourself permission to accept grace, or do you only accept punishment? A lot of times our attitude, our response to life is almost like we're preparing for punishment. It's like someone has done you harm so much that you only receive that. But what if grace is sitting there saying, hey, waving his hands like, hey, I'm here. Let me in. You got to be able to receive it. You got to elevate your character. You got to elevate your thinking. You got to elevate your belief system. Let your character go before you. You got to learn to trust. You got to create a legacy that your children see. You got to create a legacy of faith. Elevate your thinking. Elevate your heart. Send out a different vibration and energy. Send out a different signal of faith. Let people know, starting with you, that you are deserving of grace. 27 years, clean driving record. 27 years, clean driving. It didn't erase my mistake. I still did it. But grace stepped in. Grace stepped in. It protected the legacy. grace did. It wasn't the fact that I did 27 or maybe 28 years soon. It was grace that stepped in. It was my trust. It was me switching from this thinking to this thinking about me, myself, and I, to this thinking about, hey, God, hey, I did make a mistake. And he's saying, yeah, your son's there. And I want him to recognize that he's going to make mistakes too. But how are you going to respond? And what are you teaching them? My son understands now that preparation, attitude, and truth go further than any fear that you can have. I wasn't just spared a ticket. This was about a lesson of leadership, right? Black boys are 2.5 more times likely to be pulled over by police, even when driving safely. But when they model calm, prepared responses, and cooperate, statistics shows that it reduces escalation over 80%. Wow. Are you building a record with, defending? Are you building a record worth defending? not just legally, but spiritually and emotionally. Like, what are we defending here? A lot of times we try to defend our righteousness, but at the end of the day, we need to defend that spiritual walk that we have. That emotional response and that intelligence that we need to have that says, I surrender my will, my emotions, and my intellect. I'm going to make mistakes, but let me press towards doing the best that I can every single day. Let me wake up in the morning saying it's a new day and I'm going to challenge myself to do better today, better than yesterday. I don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to release what I knew to do and allow the things that I've learned in the past to continue to be a part of my life as long as it serves me well. If it no longer serves me, I'm letting it go. If pride and ego no longer serve me, I'm letting it go. Total release does not mean letting go of guilt when grace shows up. See, preparation is a seed that removes all that fear. Owning your wrong can lead to restore respect. You got to understand that. Respect, respect, respect. Your peace teaches your children how to respond under pressure. You got to show that peace. And see, grace doesn't ignore truth. It acknowledges your character. That's right. Character. So let me challenge you right now. If this video today showed you anything or touched you in any kind of way, I'm going to ask that you subscribe at the bottom. But more importantly, share it. Share it with a young person. Share it with their parents. Share it with your neighbors. Share it. We all make U-turns in life, some illegally, some emotionally, and some spiritually. Sometimes it's good to make a U-turn and go the other direction. Maybe you're headed down the wrong direction right now, and this video spoke to you today about grace. Maybe you feel like going down the wrong road. You've been doing it too long, and you feel like there's no grace for you. I'm here to tell you, if you're hearing this video right now, there's grace for you. So I challenge you right now. You can just say to yourself, hey, God, I don't feel worthy. You can say to yourself, I don't feel worthy, you. But let me tell you something. I want you to challenge yourself today to quiet for a moment. Take a deep breath and relax. Let the traffic, the busy signals and alarms in your mind that normally we hear in traffic and on the streets, quiet yourself. And I want you to ask yourself, why was I created? Why am I here? Do I have purpose? Do I have assignment? Do I want to live a life led by pain or by purpose? I feel something deep on the inside. I feel purpose. If you do, I'm going to ask you to make a U-turn right now in your life and not be afraid. And when you make that U-turn, no matter what other people say, no matter who pulls you over and tries to tell you differently, make the U-turn and tell the truth about who you are. Tell the truth and say, I have grace. And I don't mean grace to do illegal U-turns. I mean to make the U-turn that you need to change your life today. The one that starts here and that affects here and here. So I challenge you to do that today. Go ahead and subscribe. Like this video, share it with somebody. and go ahead and watch yesterday's. It's just as good. I couldn't remember exactly which one it was, but I know it was about an event or it was about something else. So anyway, go ahead, click it, like it, and share it. God bless. This is Daniel Schroeder with Total Release. See you tomorrow.